Infectious world written by Writing Dracon. What do you mean, don't play with humans? That was the question of the representative for one of the new races that had just joined the council. We mean just that. We are all well aware that they are part of the council, but, well, the centauric chancellor said, shuffling a little. This was one of the few times that the humans, or their allies, the Saline, or the Saurian trikes, were present, mainly due to preparing for all-out war against the fantastical horror from the great beyond the humans had bested once, and were gearing up for round 2. A perfect moment to warn the new races why not to poke humans or their allies. Because any sentient who lives in close proximity to any human for any length of time, and this includes their sentient living constructs, starts showing signs of their traits. We think it's some kind of upper-level psionic pack bond, another sentient said, who had been on the council for a long time. What kind of traits, and how would a psionic pack bond be bad? Sounds more like it would be a good thing, said another of the new races, just having discovered FTL and left their homeworlds. The Chancellor sighed. Simply put, their tenacity, partial insanity, and refusal to just give up. The Karai learned this one the hard way during the attempted annexation of the Crevel system. Needless to say, the locals pulled back with everything they had to their disposal, and ended up creating possibly one of the most effective, if horrifying, special force teams in existence, despite their questionable sanity. One of the new races, a predatory snake-like race, perked up, their tongues flicking in anticipation. Sounds like a wonderful sparring race, they hissed hungrily, imagining all the war games they could play, only to get a snort from one of the admirals. Good luck. Carking Thal damned squishies managed to figure out how to use space as a damned weapon, the admiral groaned. Silence reigned before the chaos erupted, demanding how they managed to do it. The admiral in question sighed and stood up, motioning for silence. They were Gyra, a thick-skinned, brass-colored creature with 2 arms and 3-legged. Earning them a strange loping gait, their twin eye stalks panning about as they trundled up to the podium. A few days ago, I received reports from a merchant fleet that they were under attack by pirates. Normal stuff. We set out to investigate, until they explained that they had gotten away unscathed, all but one ship, a human vessel, who they seemed to have a grudge on. I would later learn that the same ship was responsible for destroying the Black Star and its entire crew, using nothing more than a mining laser tractor beam system, and the asteroid belt they are flying in. Details are sparse. The humans and their allies are tight-lipped on how, only saying what weapons were used, but at the time the nearest station registered as the lithium cascade close to the slagged remains of the Black Star. The auditorium was silent, many looking at one another in shock and confusion. However, unlike with the Black Star incident, the Indomitable incident, there were several sharp intakes of breath and a muffled curse from the Karai, was far better documented. Seems the Black Star pirates had let the rest of the fleet know who they were paid to go after, and when it was learned that they were destroyed, Captain Harcia decided to take on the ship in question. I received word at the time, not only had the ship, the Event Horizon, yes, that ship, a myth out of their own history books, had not only been rearmed, but because of her Cephalon-class construction, had installed additional weapon systems, the kind one would see on their PT ships. Several races hissed and winced. For reference, a human PT ship is designed to be small, fast, highly maneuverable, lightly armored, and heavily armed. They can dance around capital ships' fire, get in close and release heavy ordnance, and get out before you have time to get anything stronger than anti-fighter cannons locked onto them. The Indomitable was a breach-class capital ship, normally used to grab vessels and hold them in place to board them, or pummel them into submission, or oblivion, the Admiral continues. Holograms of the ships to scale appeared above the Chancellor. The Indomitable easily dwarfed the horizon by several orders of magnitude. Don't let their size fool you. That one ship, and one ship alone, was capable of completely neutering the Indomitable's armament and ripping her apart until nothing remained but the command section. The Admiral paused to take a deep breath and stared down at the younger races. The snake-like one, looking on in anticipatory glee, while several others were skeptical. The Indomitable moved in to attempt a capture of the horizon, upon which the horizon told the merchant fleet to evacuate and charged into the fray. As soon as they were within tether range, the disc section separated from the main body, turning into a small gunboat, while the main section bombarded them from afar. The hologram showed exactly that, doing a representation of the maneuvers that the vessel pulled. One crippled thanks to well-placed shots, and a well-placed explosive thanks to the large transmit dish beneath. The Indomitable attempted to take the horizon out by a suicide bird. Several races hissed, an unfortunate common tactic by pirates, especially if they wanted to remove the enemy they fought from the fray. That's when they learned why the horizon held such a high regard. It's not only the smallest ship that they have equipped with one of their illustrious and frankly quite terrifying vol drives, it's weaponized it, the Admiral said, as the hologram showed space distorting around the horizon, but remaining in real space, becoming a mobile, lethal, hyper-vicious black hole, racing around the Indomitable, tearing into shreds with nothing more than glancing blows. As of right now, they won't tell us how it did this, which is par for the course, as they won't even explain their Volt engines to anyone, and frankly, none of us want to use such an insane system. Now the Horizon has the smallest drive, true, but the humans have far, far larger ones. Imagine the ship the size of a shipyard dropping in and then suddenly becoming a black hole, ripping apart entire solar systems. And that's not even counting what else humanity has in store. Even if you were to incapacitate the crew of the vessel, well, the Admiral said and gave a glare at the Haguk. The vessels themselves are alive and more than willing to make sure any threats to their crew are falling apart in the black. And the Horizon is one such vessel. And what's more, it's not even a combat vessel. It's a scientific ship. A cough from the counselor got the Admiral's attention, making the sentient sigh. Apologies. Back to the matter at hand. Fact of the matter is, humans can and will use anything and everything they have to their advantage. The human Marines, known as Team Fortress, are an example of what happens when you cut them off from the command force and they pulled out all the stops up to the Geneva Convention. And that's not something I'm willing to go into here, as it's better said by someone else who saw when one race, who no longer exists, turned it into what they called the Geneva Checklist. The creature shuddered. Anyways, once cut off from command, the Marines went crazy. You see, their command isn't there to protect them. They are there to protect their opponent. Why? Because if a human, or a human exposed to vision, is let loose, it's like letting an industrial assembly arm loose in a room full of glass with random inputs every nanosecond. Utter chaos. The Karai shuddered in their alcove, a haunted look flashing across their facsimile of a face. They just kept coming, the Karai said, their single, large eye staring into nothing. We cut one down, made sure to burn the body to keep them from retrieving it, and they kept coming back. Our psionics confirmed it was the same ones. False teeth, they even joked about their own deaths. Their souls, their minds moved to cloned bodies and kept fighting, holding down positions, taking fortifications, stealing intelligence data. They didn't stop. We could only hope they slowed to train the locals for each world they stopped at during the campaign. Any attempt to retake that world was met with the same insane, senseless tactics. Retaking the world was useless. We tried to glass their worlds, but they returned our own lasers against us. They used the solar farm mirrors to bounce our weapons back to the point of origin, melting the weapons in their mounts before sending up their mining augers. The Karai closed its eyes and placed its hands on its head. I could still hear the scream of metal as the massive mining tools punched through our hulls like flimsy, disorganized, angry miners and farmers, armed with nothing more than their own tools of the trade, and used them like weapons. Scythes for wheat sliced through our warriors, having been combined with vibro swords. Mining lasers sliced through flesh in moments. Detonation charges used for blast mining were used to demolish locked doors, destroy engines, barricades, and central computers. And then the teams themselves. They stole our ships without even being noticed, slipped aboard, leaving trails of bodies in their wake silently. or ripping through walls with their chattering abomination of weapons, or used mining lasers to cut through bulkheads, walking through it like it was normal doorway, or danced with fire, leaving it everywhere like it was their hallmark, letting it play in their hand, unharmed. The Karai opened its eye. You couldn't even trust a friend. Many were dead, and were replaced by the infiltration specialists, mimicking our mannerisms, our habits, blending in, and then drove a knife between our ribs the moment we turned our backs to fight his brothers in arms, or left machines that would destroy, dismantle, or reprogram whatever they were left on, the Karai said, trembling. By now the entire auditorium was silent, listening to the Karai's testimony. They will laugh in the face of death. They will not care how many times they die if it means that their families are safe, their friends are safe. You threaten their young, and that makes it worse, the Karai said. I watched one of my superior officers hold a child by their hair, knife to their throat. The biggest of the lot, the infiltrator, and the loud one, utterly lost it. Even the fastest, the smallest of them couldn't match the speed they moved at. The infiltrator sliced through the arm of my commander like it was nothing, bone and all, while the biggest pulled the young away and handed them to their healer, who, with their fastest, comforted the child. All the while, the other three took turns using my commander for a sparring dummy. Even the healer took a turn, using his instruments to undo the damage just to do it again, to muffle screams of pain, to not traumatize the young one. The Karai trailed off, silent, not speaking any more. And it spreads and spreads quickly. The Glinch, once docile, the Trike, quiet and reserved, the Saline, quiet and meek, and now, the Chancellor said, shaking his head, they still have those traits, but it's overshadowed by curiosity. The need to break down physics door, rearrange every room, glue all the furniture to the ceiling, and then leave after fixing the door like nothing happened. Their will and anger to protect their young, even when they can just make more, to ensure that those that took them learn never to touch a hair on the little ones' heads. The need to make sure that their loved ones are safe, to protect them to the last breath and beyond in many cases. And it is not an isolated event. Any of your races that you see exhibiting that spark, that tenacity, that outreach sensation, like a mix between a sleeping predator and a dark guardian, quietly relocate them to human space before it spreads to the rest of your people. Several of the younger races scoffed. The snake-like one was curious, as was a more bear-like species. One of the older races sighed. Just don't play with the humans if you know what's good for you, or everyone else. Last thing we need is them going on some false crusade because some idiot harmed their young or their friends. You can trade with them carefully. You can let them pass through your space or not, it's up to you. Just don't wake up the sleeping horrors, before it's time, followed by another representative's voice. We have enough to deal with as it is. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.